Yo, what's up guys, it's the Anime Titan here, back at it again with another What If, and today I will be doing What If Deku had a sound quirk. I'm sorry, I'm kinda irritated because this is the third time I'm redoing this video, but I will try to make it as good as possible without being just like, yeah, this, that. Because I'm actually really irritated because I can't get any of the stuff that I did back because I don't do mine scripted. It's all out of my head. So basically, whenever I want to know something, I have to go back to my actual videos and rewatch them to know anything from the previous parts. So last time we left off was when Izuku had actually just saved Kyoka, gotten rid of the 0 pointer, and had 5 fractures in each arm. So Recovery Girl heals Izuku, and then Izuku's just... he's fine. Kyoka thanks him, and Izuku says no problem. So Izuku will just time skip to when Izuku gets his letter. So that whole entire All Might speech goes the same. Izuku gets second in the written exam, as well as first place in the practical portion. This being him getting 90 villain points, as well as a solid 50 hero points from saving Kyoka Jiro. Which means Izuku is landing on a... no, not 50, 40, sorry. Izuku lands on a solid 131 points. So let's go ahead and jump into the first day of UA. As Bakugo and Izuku would just be walking through the gates of UA, Izuku would just likely be playing music. Not playing music, but making music out of out of thin air. So yeah, they'd be walking with Bakugo just listening to the tune that Izuku is playing while the two is talking. Because, yeah, Izuku can do that. He subconsciously plays music sometimes. So he doesn't really just care. So Izuku would just be walking through the halls with Bakugo as Bakugo would stop him, pointing at the 1A door, saying that, damn, this is a big door. Izuku would look at the door asking, yo, what the hell, guy? Are there kids with size shifting quirks in our class, or just really big kids? As Bakugo would say, I don't know, man, I don't know. So the two would enter and immediately get targeted by Tenya Ida, who runs up to Izuku apologizing for calling him out at when Prison Mike was busy explaining about the 0 pointer and stuff, because Izuku was not really paying attention to Prison Mike and got carried away with his music, so he started letting out a soft tune, which was picked up throughout the entire class, as well as Prison Mike, who was vibing to it. Because we all know Prison Mike got a sound quirk, so any sound Prison might be vibing to. As Ida would have yelled at Izuku, telling him to turn off that music, and he would then have changed his directory straight at Prison Mike, and Prison Mike would have still explained to Ida how things would have gone in canon. But this is when Ida would apologize for yelling at Izuku about turning down the music and telling him that he is a better student than him. Izuku would then just tell Ida that it's no sweat and he can't turn down the music because that is actually his quirk. As Ida would be like, oh, okay, and then Izuku would explain that he's not a better student, he was just thinking like a hero. Because a hero's main job is to save people. You can fight villains all you want, but saving people is more important. As everybody who was in the class would have taken this to heart, as Aizawa would have heard this because he wasn't asleep at that time. So he would have heard this and he would have been like, ah, yes, I like this child. He is smart. He is hero hot. So yeah, things will go like that. As Izuku and Bakugo would take their seats and Izuku would just be chilling when out of nowhere the music starts flaring up again. This being some nice calming music, meaning Izuku is just playing calming music, which makes Aizawa a little sleepy. As this is when out of nowhere, Kyoka Jiro would be walking up to Izuku's desk, looking a little pissed, as she would put her hands down on Izuku's desk, gently tapping her finger on the desk, as Izuku would open his eyes, because he was leaning back in his chair, closed eyes, arms behind the head, like how boys chill. So anyway, he'd open his eyes and see Kyoka, as Kyoka would say, hey, didn't quite get your name. As you could say, Izuku Midoriya. Yours, well, she would have gotten his name. Did she? I don't know, can't remember. But anyway, let's just say she got his name. She'd say, "Hey Izuku, I have a question for you." As Izuku would reply with, "Shoot." As the music would still be playing because subconsciously he is still playing music. As Kyoko would ask, "What exactly is your quirk?" As Izuku would tell her, to get the class quiet real quick. As Kyoko would ask the class to quiet down, and they'd all just hear music. As Izuku would say, "That's my quirk. I have a sound manipulation quirk." Well, basically a mixture between my father's sound manipulation quirk as well as my mother's telekinesis quirk. Meaning, I can manipulate sound however I please. Being it playing a tune that's in my head on the outside, like I'm doing now, or condensing my sound down to make me shoot blasts of pure sound. Which Aizawa heard and was like, okay, so it's a human speaker. We got a second prison mic. As Izuku would say, but, I only got one little problem. It's the fact that I can't always control my sound. As Kyoko would ask, "What do you mean?" As Izuku would say, there are times when he subconsciously starts playing music, not knowing him always hearing tunes in his head, even when him hearing musical notes and sounds playing in his head, even when the teacher is speaking. He still hears the teacher, but he adds a rhythm to the teacher's voice. As Kyoko would have been like, "Okay, interesting." So yeah, she would have explained that. As Izuku would tell them all, "Yeah, y'all can. We should all probably start sitting down. It's almost time for the teacher to arrive, anyways." As everybody would sit down and quiet down, but the music would still be playing. As Aizawa would have actually been liking this music because, it's a little bit of an upbeat. Aizawa feeling like he got a little bit more energy. How that music do. But anyway, the class 1B students would have also heard the music, and boy, oh boy, was some of them pissed. So, like, Monoma, wondering why the hell they're using their quirk. Well, why the hell they playing music? Are they partying in there? Tetsu saying that, it's not manly, man. It's not manly to interrupt another class. Kendo just going to drag them back to class. So, Monoma would have barged in asking, "Why the hell are they playing music? They having a party in here?" As they would say, "No." As Mono would say, "Where the hell is that music coming from?" As Bakugo would just point at Izuku saying, "Him, quirk." As Mono would say, "What quirk does he have?" As Izuku would open his eyes yet again saying, "Sound manipulation." As the tune of the music would change to a more, let's say, club vibe. So basically, he would constantly be shifting the music, just having them flow in with each other, just having the perfect track playing together. As Monoma would have been like, "What is this? How? Impossible." As Tetsu would be saying, "It's not manly to interrupt classes, man." As Zuko would say, "I'm not trying to. When I'm too into something, my music starts playing on its own. This is subconscious, guy. I can't control it. Whenever this happens, I just need something to calm me down or to breathe or something." As Kendo would have just karate chopped karate chopped Monoma and dragged Tetsu out of there, seeing as Tetsu can harden. So yeah, Kendo would have just dragged Monoma out of there, as well as Tetsu apologizing for just interrupting. So they would go, and Aizawa would pop out, as everybody would straighten up except for Izuku, because his eyes are closed again, he didn't hear it. So Bakugo would quickly just rummage through his pockets as he'd pull out an elastic band, which he'd shoot at Izuku, hitting the boy in the head, causing the music to stop, because Izuku felt pain. He would look forward and see the teacher as he'd straighten up and take a closer look, saying, "Our pro hero Eraserhead." As Aizawa would have been like, "How do you know me?" As Izuku would say, "Oh, you're one of my favorite heroes. I modeled my sound traveling after you, all quiet and stealth." As everybody would have looked at Izuku like, "What do you mean, sound traveling?" As Kyoko would say, "Oh, so that's what you did." As they'd be like, "What do you mean?" As Izuku would then reply with, I can manipulate sound, so I have bursts of sound moving from my body to the outside, basically allowing me to fly and or float. But the frequency that I choose is so low that people and animals cannot hear it. Except for Kyoka. I'm pretty sure she heard it, as Kyoka would not saying, it's a really low frequency, but I can pick it up. As Yuzuku would say, see, sound quirks, best. As Bakugo would stand up saying, yeah, right, my quirk's the best, Izuku. As Izuku would say, yeah, no, not really, Kachan. As the people would kind of start chuckling at this, but this is when Aizawa would tell them, yeah, if you're here to make friends, you should leave now. As he'd pull out some of... Sorry, guys. Oh, my nose is so stuffy because of the dust, and it's annoying now. So, yeah, Aizawa would pull out the sports uniform as he'd tell them that, take these, go get dressed, we're going to have a quick assessment test. As Uraraka, yet again, would be like... As Uraraka yet again will, not yet again, but will ask Mr. Aizawa if they're not going to do the initiation, with Aizawa telling her that this is UA, this is much different from any other school, and they run their classes the way they see fit. They only have so long to turn them into heroes, and he's planning on using every single one of those moments. So take one, get dressed, and get out. Well, take one, get out, get dressed, and then be ready. As Izuku would get up and take one, leaving for the locker rooms with Bakugo close behind. Soon everybody would start getting up and following through as we go to the boys' locker room now. When Izuku had opened the door, he'd immediately started subconsciously letting out music, as this would have been more of a club vibe music, the kind that the Clover plays, which Kyoko would have noticed the moment she walked in, because she went out one night with her friends. Yeah, they found the club. They were in the club. It was a nice time. So yeah, she would have recognized this, as she would actually start vibing, because it's Kyoka. She likes music. But anyway, as the boys would file in, they'd hear the music actually starting to hear the music being a bit more of a club vibe. Aizawa on the outside would be vibing, because it's Aizawa though. Because anyway, Aizawa's a bit lazy, so he won't outright vibe and show it. He's just vibing on the inside. You know, that internal vibe. Just vibe. But anyway, Sarah would point out that this music sounds familiar, as Izuku would ask, what do you mean? As Sarah would say it reminds him of it reminds him of a DJ that was playing in the club. I think his name was the Clover. As Bakugo would burst out laughing, as he'd look at Izuku saying, well, he'd say this out loud, saying, looks like you've been exposed, Izuku. As Sarah would outright say it, wait, you're the Clover? As Izuku would say, shh, hey, come on, no, cut it out. As Mineta would come up saying, wait, no way, you're the Clover? So cool, man. You think you can help me get a babe? As Izuku would have said, no, you perverted bastard. As Mineta would have just left, as he would say, come on, guys, you can't tell anybody about this. Like, I get a lot of money, but it's still no, come on, man. I only do that because I have to help my mom. As Bakugo would say, oh yeah, how's Auntie Inko doing anyways? As Izuku would reply, she's doing better. Doctors say at least 2 more months and then she's good to come home. As everybody would have been like, what's going on? As Izuku would say, nothing. Just a little bit of personal problem. As Izuku would have just started getting dressed, with Kyoka actually hearing the entire conversation. As when Mineta would actually try, and I mean try to peek, Izuku would quickly just blast him with a sonic frequency, which would send Mineta flying into one of the lockers. As Izuku would quickly, and I mean quickly, let out a frequency that would, when I say this, I mean it literally. It would make the wall look basically wobbly and woozy. It would basically turn the wall from a solid sorry, to basically like something like jello, because Izuku is vibrating the particles in the wall with his sound. It's causing it to go from a solid to a more jelly type, which is like a solid liquid, half solid liquid. So yeah, it would be going like that as he would plug up the hole and the wall would straighten out again with the hole being plugged. As Izuku would say, try being a pervert again and see what happens. As he would leave with Bakugo and the rest of them close behind. Also, Kirishima would have seen how ripped Deku was, but he wouldn't really have said it. Well, he would have said it, but Izuku would have just said, yeah, I don't really care about my... Yeah, my workout regimen is basically just me running up and down from my house to where I work and back on Saturdays and Sundays. As Kirishima would have been like, oh, okay, so this is a work bod. As Izuku would say, yeah, you could say so. So Kirishima would have been like, okay, manly. So when they'd get outside, Aizawa would toss the ball to Izuku, saying that you got the highest, yada yada yada. Throw the ball using your quirk. Not allowed to leave the circle. Basically, the stuff in canon. As Izuku would cup his hands, put the ball in between them, and he would point it out towards, away from him, as a massive blast of sound would send the ball just hurling, and I mean hurling, through the air, as out of nowhere you'd hear boom as it would break the sound barrier, just shooting far, far, far further. As everybody would wondering what the hell just happened, as Izuku would then explain that he launched the ball with sound, and then as soon as it got high enough, he used sound that the ball was creating by traveling through the wind to break the sound barrier yet again and send it flying even further and faster. As everybody was like, what? So Aizawa would have then pointed the the screen thing to the kids, as it would show that Izuku had nailed a solid 300,000 meters. And everybody would be like, damn, nope, nope. Bakugo would have nailed a solid 1,500, no, let's give him 1,900 meters. As basically everybody else would get as the same thing in canon. The quirk apprehension test would go relatively normal, with Izuku using his quirk in all sorts of manners, and him actually doing decent on the grip test, seeing as he actually does have some physical body. So yeah, Izuku would have gone through, and he would have gotten basically second place. Nope, first place. I'm pretty sure first place. Yeah. So yeah, Izuku would have gotten first place, as he would have gone and after school he would have started walking, when out of nowhere Kyoka would run up to him and ask if it's true. As Izuku would say, "What do you mean?" As she'd ask, "Is it true that you're the Clover?" Izuku would look at Bakugo saying, "Thanks a lot, man." As Kyoko would say, "No, no, no, I didn't hear it from anybody. I heard it when you guys were in the locker room." As Izuku would say, "Were you peeping on us?" As Kyoko would say, "No, no, nothing like that. It's just, I heard Moneta. Well, I heard the sound, so I wanted to hear better, so I kind of stuck my earphone jack in the wall and overheard the entire conversation, as well as you knocking away Moneta, which I want to thank you for." As Izuku would say, "No problem. It's nothing worse than a pervert in my eyes." As Kyoka would just smile as she'd say, "But is it true?" As Izuku would say, "Yeah, it is." As Kyoka would say, "I'm actually a huge fan. I love your music so much. Not only those that you make in the clubs, but those that you post online as well." As Izuku would have looked at her like, "What do you mean?" As Kyoko would have said, "Yeah, I know. But I follow two people. I follow two sound people, and those two people is Izuku Midoriya, the chilled music content creator, as well as the Clover, the DJ of, well, the best DJ in Japan at the moment." As Izuku would say, not the best DJ in Japan. As Kyoko would say, no, you quite literally are. You've shattered records. As Izuku would say, oh, come on. Why? You see, that's the thing. As Kyoko would say, why don't you just tell everybody who you are? As Izuku would say, that's exactly the problem. I want people to know me for who I am, not for who the clover is. That's why most of the girls that I meet, who eventually, if I eventually tell them I'm the clover, they're like, every time I tell people that I'm the clover, they immediately are just like, oh, so cool. And every girl basically tries to get me because I am the clover. No girl wants me because I am Izuku Midoriya. So I try to hide the clover as much as possible. As he would have walked off a little ticked off, but Bakugo would have told her that, yeah, he really does love music, but there's another reason that he doesn't want to be known as the clover. As Kyoko would have been like, what's that reason? As Bakugo would say that, I can't tell you, you have to ask him. As Kyoko would have just looked at Izuku and she would have just left him to cool down. As Bakugo would yell, wait up! Quickly running after Izuku. Izuku would have had a bit of a head start on Bakugo, but Bakugo would have caught up in no time and would have asked, "Come on, man, she didn't mean it like that." As Izuku would say, "Yeah, I know, but I just can't deal with this. Everybody constantly is Clover this, Clover that. Whenever I tell them who it is, everybody always wants stuff from me because I'm the Clover. Nobody ever knows me for who I really am." As Bakugo would say, "Hey, I know you for who you really are. Your mom knows you for who you really are. And you don't need anybody. You're good enough as you are. I mean, being a pro hero, looking after your mom, and looking after yourself all at the same time. Man, you're stronger than you think." As Izuku would say, "Thanks, Kachan." As Izuku would have split from Kachan, well, Katsuki, as Katsuki would have gone home and Izuku would have gone home as well. So basically, next day would roll around, and school would be just be normal school. Just like this entire day would be normal school. I'm gonna do timed intervals like week between the There's like a week between the first day and then the hero training exercise. Then there's like give it another 2 weeks before the USJ, and then a week after the USJ there's the sports festival. So that's how that'll work. It'll basically take up at least 2 months, I think. So yeah. The next day would roll around and Kyoko would go up to Izuku and apologize firstly. As Izuku would say, no, it's not her fault. She didn't know. As Kyoko would then proceed to ask, proceed to say, I'm sorry if I'm intruding, but why don't you like being the clover? As Izuku would then proceed to tell Kyoka that because he's known as the Clover, this one girl really wanted to go out with him, and she said that if he didn't want to go out with her, that she'd actually quite literally target his mother. As Kyoko would just be shocked that somebody would do that. As Izuku would say, "Yeah, my mom can't even defend herself at this point." As Kyoko would ask, "What do you mean?" Izuku would then just say, if I'm gonna tell you this, I might as well tell everybody this. As he'd gather the attention of everybody in the entire class, as he'd proceed to tell them that, "Hi, I'm Izuku Midoriya, aka the Clover." As a bunch of the boys would just be bickering because Sarah was the only one who knew up until that day. Well, who knew a day before, so he wouldn't be as stunned. As Izuku would say, "Yeah, I don't like people knowing I'm the Clover, because," as he looks over to Bakugo would say, "They're gonna need to trust you, man." As Izuku would say, "Yeah, I got you." As he'd go on and say, "I'm Izuku Midoriya, the Clover, and I don't like being known as the Clover because this one woman that was obsessed with me as the Clover, not for who I really am, had threatened to take out my mother if I did not agree to date her. So I will tell you guys this, and only you this, that I am the Clover, and that you, and I repeat, you will not tell anybody of this. Because I swear, if any of you put my mother in danger, I will not think twice about blasting you to the moon with my sound. As Kyoka would have been just absolutely shocked that somebody would threaten his mother just for a measly date. As she would have gone up to Izuku and apologized for actually just being that way. As well, apologized for trying to make him reveal who he really was to the entire world. As Izuku would have said, "No, it's not your fault. You couldn't have possibly known." As everybody would just be murmuring a bit, as Shoto would be the first to step up, saying, That was honorable of you for telling us. Thank you for sharing your secret." As the next one who would stand up is Tenya Ida, who would say, "I do apologize for the manners of how some people act, but please do note that not all of us are that way." Izuku would just go through the rest of the off period, just hearing stories and compliments from the people, and just people saying that overall his music is really good and that he should be proud of it. But if it means it's such a heavy burden, that they will keep his secret. Izuku would have thanked them, and he would just go on for the next week, just being normal school. Let's have a look, see at the time, and we have about now 4 minutes, so let's have a look if we can do the heroes versus villains in that time. So, the heroes versus villains would have popped around, and Izuku's suit will basically be exactly the way it is in canon. No, not the first. I'm talking about later. I'm talking about like end of the not end of the movie. The gear that Izuku has around the movie, that suit. Yeah, Izuku's costume would look like that, but just pure black, and then the green would be black, and the black line that goes across his entire suit will basically be purple. Yeah, let's give him purple. And the gloves on his hands would, instead of being used for wind pressure, would be used for sound waves. So yeah, Izuku could channel sound through a specific point, or just through his hands in general. So that's basically how Izuku's costume would look. So yeah, basically, let's get into it. So in this timeline, we will have Izuku Midoriya partnered with Kyoka Jiro versus Shoto Todoroki and Katsuki Bakugo. Bakugo would tell Shoto that he has to be careful for Izuku. His sound is a really dangerous weapon, especially in confined spaces, seeing as he can bounce it off walls. And if you don't remember, I took away Izuku's Quirk Awakening. It was way too early for that, actually. So I decided, cut it out. Not gonna work. So yeah, there is no Quirk Awakening for Izuku, but he can still bounce sound off, and he is just really, really powerful. Shoto would tell him that, okay, that yada yada yada. And Kyokajiro and Izuku Midoriya will be the villain team. So Izuku would tell Kyoka that he is going to ask her for a favor, and that she quickly just needs to cover her ears, as Izuku would send a sonar pulse straight through the entire building, feeling that there's something rapidly spreading, as he'd quickly just send out a large burst of sound which would shatter the ice, which kind of pissed off Todoroki, because, yeah, there goes his insta-win streak. So Shoto Todoroki would be annoyed, but he would just decide that he'd be walking up the building. So Izuku and Kyoka would be there near the bomb, as they'd be waiting for Bakugo and Todoroki, as Izuku would ask her what her quirk is, as Kyoka would say, earphone jack. She is capable of emitting her heart beat from speakers as well as listening through solid objects. As Izuku would say, okay, that's really good. As he would then proceed to tell her, you already know my quirk, so now we just need to come up with a plan. As Izuku would have told Kyoka that he's actually got an idea. That if he can get up close to them, he can disrupt Bakugo and Shoto's eardrums, meaning knock them out. As Izuku would have decided he would hide in the room next door to Kyoka, with Kyoka waiting outside the door. So Izuku would be waiting there when, out of nowhere, Izuku would be waiting in the door next door, as Kyoka would be waiting outside the door when Shoto and Bakugo would storm her. Shoto would try to use his ice, but Kyoko would have seen what Izuku had done last time, as she let out a burst of sound, shattering the ice as well. Bakugo would have taken this opportunity, seeing as he's used to the sound waves, as he launched straight at Kyoka, capturing Kyoka, kicking Kyoka in the stomach, causing her to back away. As she is clutching her stomach, Bakugo would quickly just maneuver around her and wrap her up in the tape. As Bakugo and Shoto would have walked into the room, when out of nowhere Izuku would have appeared from behind them and shot a massive blast of sound at them. As Izuku would say, sorry, Kyoka. As he'd quickly untie her and he'd walk over to Bakugo and Todoroki saying, ha ha ha, you fell for my plan. You see, I knew that you two would be strong fighters, but even without your ears, you'd be disrupted. You can't fight when your ears are paining like that. So I'm just gonna go ahead and capture you. As Izuku would just capture up Bakugo and Todoroki, and the villain team would win. And yeah, that's what I'm gonna be cutting out. Anime Titan signing off. Peace.